Ok, ta sẽ tiếp tục với một khóa học mới về BIOS. Khóa học này sẽ tiếp tục cho BIOS trong system. Cái nào mà đã tải rồi không? Trong đây tiếp nốt biết rồi. Trang này tôi hay đeo cái khóa học chùa để nghiên cứu để coi thử trên tiếp nốt có cái gì về điện tử không. Cái giống nhau, mở nào cái này được chip về điện tử không? Trước từ mát lát đến mát lát, cái này không có khe này. Cái này hình như là tôi có rồi. Cái view đây này, đây có. Signal Processing Solution, cơ bản về xe điện này. Double Simulink lót này, mô phỏng mạch điện với Python. Khóa này khá là hay. Cứ tạm tải cái file torrent rồi bỏ nó vào còn torrent download download một file file cơ bản xe điện hay không có. Ok, trực tiếp thì tải trực tiếp căng rồi đây Simulink này có luôn. Đó là đã có hai cách tải, một là cách tải torrent, một là tải trực tiếp. Cách nào cũng được, tôi máy đang đọc tải cái nhẹ cái nặng thì sao để torrent đấy. Đặt cái hết mát lát và lên mát lát. Cái link này là bạn muốn tải là bạn nhấn nhiều lần, nhấn là giữ không tải được đâu. nó sẽ ra cái trang quảng cáo nó giữ cái link torrent kiểu như thế này. Torrent kiểu như thế này tôi sẽ bỏ vào trong cái mục là mục torrent chưa cài đặt. Thì một cái link torrent mà tôi đã cài rồi xóa đi khỏi nó tốn công mà thôi lại. Còn mấy trang này nó không có phần kết luôn. Chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu với cái chương thích. Làm thế nào để lập trình trên BIOS cơ bản, có phần giới thiệu đây.
Hi, in this course you will learn everything about how to program the BIOS IC of any computer. In this crash course, I will answer these questions in detail. What is the BIOS? How the BIOS works? What are the faults that require programming the BIOS chip? What do we need to program the BIOS chip? How to program the BIOS chip? What is the programmer and where can we get it? What is the BIOS software and how do I choose the best one? What is the firmware and which programming language is used to write a BIOS program? Why we need the bin file or hex file to program the BIOS? Where can we get the bin or binary files? What are the best and cheapest programmer and where can I buy it? How can I convert AXA file or executive file to bin file or binary file? What is the types of BIOS? Understanding the BIOS pin configuration and circuit diagram. Where can I download the BIOS firmwares and much more. Note: because BIOS programming is one of the most sensitive maintenance operations, I will be in touch with any student who enrolls in this course. I'm going to help you in the process of programming the BIOS chip until a full understanding of BIOS programming. I will help you choose the right programmer for you if you don't have it. I will help you choose the appropriate firmware for your BIOS chip. I'm going also to help you prepare the programmer, choose the appropriate adapter, understand BIOS software. I will teach you how to save a backup copy of your original firmware and all other steps until the computer is working. So, what are you waiting for? Enroll now and let's get started.
Thế là phần giới thiệu Basic Input Output System BIOS và 3 video. Anh em sẽ xem video 1 qua lên cái luật lập trình cho BIOS. Thì sau khi thiết kế chip xong thì bạn phải lập trình cho con chip nữa, không nó cũng không có chạy được. Lập trình vậy rồi tôi sẽ Google BIOS là cái gì. The Basic Input Output System, đây là phần BIOS. BIOS là đây. Để hình minh họa để dễ hiểu thì đây chính là cái màn hình khởi động BIOS khi khởi động máy tính. Anh em nào có laptop thì khởi động lên thì có hình như thế này. Ví dụ BIOS Max
BIOS, or Basic Input-Output System, is a program that is charged to start the computer system after it is powered on. It also manages the data flow between the computer's operating system and attached devices, such as the hard disk drive, the keyboard, the mouse, and printer. The BIOS software is a group of instructions. It performs a self-test called POST, or Power on Self-Test, that helps to verify the computer hardware. If the computer does not pass the POST, you will hear a combination of beeps that indicate what is malfunctioning in the computer. BIOS, or Basic Input-Output System, is
Basic Input Output System.
Hi again. So in this lecture, I'm going to show you the place of the BIOS in the motherboard. So as you can see here, this is the laptop motherboard. Okay. Here in the motherboard, we have always the CPU. This is the GMCH. Here we have the ICH, or the sort bridge. Okay. So always in the motherboard, in the laptop motherboard, you should look for the Super IO, the SIO. So let's check here, we don't have the Super IO. So let's check the other side. As you can see, here we have the SIO. This is the Super IO, as you can see. So usually the BIOS chip is near to the SIO, to the Super Input Output IC. Okay. So let's check here, we don't have the BIOS, so the BIOS should be in the other side of this IC. So let's check. So as you can see, this is the BIOS, as you can see here. Okay, let's check its reference. As you can see here, this is the BIOS reference. We have 25Q16BVS AG. 16, as you can see here, 16 means the capacity or the size of this BIOS is 60 megabit, means 2 megabytes. Okay, because 8 bit equal 1 byte. Okay, so always or usually you will find the BIOS near to the SIO, Super Input IO, or in the other side of this IC. Sometimes you can find the BIOS near to the ICH or to the sort bridge, and sometimes we'll find that the ICH, the BIOS, and the Super IO is near to each other. So let's check another motherboard. I will show you the BIOS in many motherboards in order to go deeper into understanding the working principle of the BIOS. Here, as you can see, we have another motherboard. So this is the processor, as you can see here. So the processor with the GMCH and also the graphic card. Here we have just in this motherboard two chip, the big chip, this and this. So this is the ICH or the circuit that is responsible for all the connectors and ports in the motherboard. Okay, here this part is the CPU, and here we have the GMCH and the graphic card. So the graphic card and the GMCH is integrated with the CPU, okay, because this is a new motherboard. So let's check. Here we have the ICH, as you can see, and here we have the Super IO, as you can see. So I told you before that the BIOS should be always or usually near to the Super IO or to the ICH. So as you can see, this is the BIOS. You should distinguish between the BIOS and the MOSFET. Always the BIOS has a big chip than the MOSFET. Okay, so here we have the MOSFET, as you can see, and here we have the BIOS. The BIOS is bigger than the MOSFET, and sometimes in some motherboards you will find the BIOS with a mark, a color here, or a paint. Okay, so let's check the reference of this BIOS. As you can see here, we have 25Q32, as you can see. So 25Q32, as you can see, BVSONG. So 32 means what? 32 megabit means 4 megabyte. Okay, 4 megabyte. Always you will find that the reference or the letter that is designed for the BIOS is U, exactly like an IC, because the BIOS is an IC. Okay, so let's check another motherboard. So we'll check also this motherboard. So as you can see here we have the processor, as you can see. Here we have the GMCH with the graphic card. So the graphic card integrated with the GMCH. Here we have the ICH or the circuit bridge, and here we have the SIO or the Super IO. Okay, so the Super IO is the IC that is responsible for the power in the whole motherboard. Okay, so let's look for the BIOS. So as you can see, here we have the ICH, here we have the Super IO, and here we have the BIOS, as you can see. So this is a MOSFET or a simple IC, and this is the BIOS. Always the BIOS is greater or is bigger than MOSFETs and other ICs with 8 pins. Okay, so as you can see here, we have a color here. Okay, as you can see, this color means the BIOS. Okay, so here we have the 3 components are next to each other. So let's check another motherboard. So as you can see here, also in this motherboard, we have the processor here, we have the GMCH, as you can see here. So let's see the other side. So in the other side, as you can see, we have the ICH or the circuit bridge, and here we have the Super IO, as you can see. So let's look for the BIOS. The BIOS should be next to the circuit bridge or next to the SIO. So let's check. So as you can see, here we have the Super input output, here we have the BIOS. Do you see the difference between BIOS and ICs or MOSFETs? Do you see the difference? Always the BIOS is bigger. So this is the BIOS. This BIOS, as you can see, it seems that this BIOS is already removed from the motherboard and reprogrammed. As you can see here, this is a new solder. Here we have a flux. So this BIOS is already reprogrammed. Okay, So this is the BIOS with 8 pins, as you can see, 8 pins. Always the pin number 1, as you can see, we'll find the pin number 1 always is marked with a hole here, or as you can see, this mark means this is the pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Always the pin number 4 of the BIOS is connected to the ground, and the pin number 8 is connected to the VCC. That's equal to 3.3 volts. We will see all this in the schematics, and we will check the BIOS using the multimeter. Okay, so we will go step by step until you be a pro in the BIOS and how to reprogram it and its schematic, etc. Okay, so we have an old BIOS, as you can see. In the new motherboards, okay, we find just BIOSes with 8 pins. Okay, so also you can reprogram this BIOS using a programmer. I will show you all this in the next lectures. Hi again.
Okay, clear overview.